You're not overlooked because you're weak. You're overlooked because you're visible, predictable, safe. The world doesn't sideline you because you're not enough. It sidelines you because you've shown too much, too soon. You speak openly. You're kind by default. You explain yourself before anyone even asks. You try to earn favor before earning fear. And in a world built on power dynamics, being likable without being respected is a silent death sentence. This isn't about becoming cruel. It's about becoming unreadable. Goodness is easy to exploit. Predictability is easy to control. That's why people interrupt you. Question your worth. Stretch your boundaries. Not because you're weak, but because they've already figured you out. And in the power game, what's figured out gets ignored, manipulated, or replaced. Now pause. Reflect. How many times have you been the most forgiving person in the room? And the most disrespected one too? This content isn't about playing games. It's about understanding the game that's already being played on you and shifting the dynamic without raising your voice. If you've ever felt invisible while being everything to everyone, if you've ever wondered why silence from you speaks louder than any explanation, you're not alone. You're not meant to bark louder. You're meant to move differently. If this message speaks to you, support this movement. Like this video and subscribe to at Unleash T7S for more truths that cut through the noise and strategies that help you stop being ignored and start being remembered. This is just the beginning. Let's change how you walk into every room, starting now. You've been taught your whole life to be a good person. Be kind. Be open. Forgive quickly. Explain yourself clearly. Smile often. And for the most part, you followed that script, believing that goodness would protect you. But somewhere along the way, you noticed something unsettling. The more open you were, the more they took. The more understanding you became, the less they respected your limits. You stayed. You explained. You gave the benefit of the doubt, and it cost you your dignity. Let's be honest. People don't test the strong. They test the available. They raise their voices when they know you won't. They interrupt when they know you'll just smile it off. They push your boundaries because they know you'll move them rather than enforce them. It's not that they're evil. It's that you're easy, emotionally accessible, overly explainable, entirely exposed. Why? Because you've been trying to be loved in a world that respects mystery more than kindness. You believe that if people saw the real you, they'd value you. But here's the problem. What's visible becomes predictable, and what's predictable becomes controllable. This is the danger of being the good one in any room. You become the one they expect to forgive, to bend, to endure. That's why you feel drained. That's why people come back only after you go silent. That's why distance is often the only language they finally respect. They were playing a power game. You were playing a loyalty game. They escalated. You explained. And every time you explain your pain to someone who doesn't respect it, you teach them they can get away with hurting you. This isn't just about relationships. It shows up at work, in family dynamics, in friendships. Anywhere empathy goes unchecked, it gets weaponized against you. But here's the truth. Being good without boundaries is not noble. It's naive. You don't need to stop being good, but you need to stop being predictable. Stop giving access without requirements. Stop assuming people deserve the softest parts of you before they have earned them. People don't adjust to what you say, they adjust to what you allow. And when you allow too much, you lose leverage. This is the shift. You stop trying to be liked first. You start becoming someone whose silence speaks louder than apology. Because at the end of the day, those who test your limits aren't curious. They're calculating. Don't be easy to understand. Be impossible to ignore. You've spent most of your life trying to be liked, trying to be agreeable, accommodating, safe. But here's the truth. People who are only liked are rarely respected. Why? Because what's familiar becomes forgettable, and what's overly visible becomes dispensable. In a world governed by power dynamics, whether in the office, your relationships, or even social media, being liked without being respected is just a slower way of being dismissed. Let's get this clear. You don't need to be feared in the way villains are feared. You need to be feared in the way storms are, respected because they're unpredictable. This is what Machiavelli understood centuries ago. He didn't advocate cruelty, he advocated perception. The prince who is feared without being hated holds more power than the prince who is loved without boundaries. Because fear triggers caution. Love without limits invites entitlement. When people can't quite figure you out, they adjust around you. They watch what they say. They measure their tone. They think twice before they act. Because now you might not bark, but you just might bite. That's the power of perception. You don't need to be dangerous. You just need to be perceived as capable of danger. And that perception starts with one thing: mystery. In a loud world where everyone is over-explaining, oversharing, and over-expressing, the person who does less becomes more. The one who speaks slowly, who moves with intention, who leaves the room before it's time, they are the ones people remember. Let's break it down. 1. Loudness is common. Composure is rare. Anyone can rant. Anyone can demand attention. But few can remain still in chaos. And it's the stillness that signals power. 2. Transparency is overrated. Opacity is leverage. If they can read you, they can play you. But when you're unreadable, they prepare for every possible version of you. That's power. 3. Predictability breeds complacency. Inconsistency breeds curiosity. Kind today, silent tomorrow. Engaged one week, withdrawn the next. People don't fear what they understand. They fear what might change without warning. When you're unpredictable, you don't need to threaten. Your presence alone becomes a question mark, and that question mark makes people careful. Here's where most people go wrong. They think being distant means being cold. They think being unreadable means being rude. But that's not true power. That's just bad communication. True power is emotional discipline. It's when people feel your warmth, but know it can disappear. It's when they hear your praise, but know your silence means more. It's when they trust your presence, but never assume your loyalty is guaranteed. Because respect doesn't come from being available. It comes from being valued, and people only value what they fear losing. You don't need to dominate every room. You just need to enter with presence and leave with weight. Here's a rule. The more emotionally accessible you are, the less strategically respected you'll be. If they know you'll always explain, always stay, always forgive, they'll never pause before crossing a line. But if there's even a 1% chance that you'll walk away without a word, they tread lightly. That's the shift. From being the safe one to being the sovereign one. From being overly understood to being quietly calculated. Machiavelli didn't care about attention. He cared about adjustment. And when people adjust themselves around you without you saying a word, that's power. Not just power in the moment. Power that lingers after you've left the room. Be honest. When was the last time your silence did more than your explanation? When was the last time your absence triggered reflection? Now imagine living like that. Not just reacting, but shaping the room before anyone speaks. That's not arrogance. That's design. That's presence. And it starts the moment you stop trying to be liked and start becoming impossible to ignore. You don't need to shout to be noticed. You don't need to argue to be right. You don't even need to speak to be remembered. In a world where noise is everywhere, silence is no longer absence. It's a weapon. And in a world where everyone reveals themselves too quickly, mystery isn't avoidance. It's strategy. This is your new playbook. A set of behaviors that don't require permission, attention, or confrontation, just discipline. Here's how to become someone who commands space, triggers caution, and builds presence without ever raising your voice. Strategy 1. Never react first. The person who reacts first loses position because they show their emotional cards before the game has even begun. When someone tries to provoke you through disrespect, sarcasm, or passive aggression, most people rush to respond. They defend, explain, correct. You pause, you observe, you wait. That pause is not hesitation, it's calculation. And nothing is more unsettling than someone who doesn't flinch when they are expected to. This doesn't mean being passive, it means being in control. The strongest move is not the loudest one, it's the one no one sees coming. Strategy 2, speak slower, say less, leave sooner. This one's simple but powerful. When you speak slower, People listen closer. When you say less, every word has weight. When you leave earlier, from conversations, meetings, rooms, you train people to miss your presence, not get used to it. Most people overstay their welcome. They explain too much, talk too long, defend their every move. But the more you give, the easier it becomes to ignore you. So flip the formula. Speak with pace, not panic. Speak with precision, not performance. Exit before you're expected to. That's how you become a presence, not just a participant. Strategy 3, don't explain yourself. Explanations are often mistaken for weakness. When you justify your silence, your boundaries, your distance, you confirm you feel guilty about them. You might think you're being honest or clear, but what you're really doing is giving people access to control your decisions. Remember, the more someone understands your emotional blueprint, the easier it is for them to manipulate your behavior. Machiavelli wouldn't explain. He'd say, noted. And that's all. Hold your position. Don't apologize for enforcing boundaries. If you said no, let it be no. If you walked away, don't walk back to explain why. Power doesn't explain. Power moves. Strategy 4, send mixed signals. On purpose, predictability is comfort. Comfort is control. But confusion, that's tension. And tension commands attention. Be unpredictable in how you engage, without being inconsistent in your values. That means you are kind today, silent tomorrow. Present this week, distant next week. Warm in one moment, unreadable in the next. Why? Because people fear what they can't prepare for. When someone can't calculate how you'll react, they hesitate before provoking you. And that hesitation is leverage. This isn't manipulation. It's creating enough contrast that people stay alert around you. Alertness breeds respect. Strategy 5, master emotional neutrality. This is one of the rarest and most powerful traits. Not being cold, not being indifferent, but being emotionally centered, always. When people gossip, stay silent. When they insult you, blink slowly. When they raise their voice, you lower yours. This emotional asymmetry creates psychological discomfort because they realize you can't be moved emotionally as easily as they can. And once someone realizes they can't shake your center, they stop trying. Or they begin adjusting their tone before they even speak. This is presence, not just being in the room, but shifting the room by how little you react to it. Strategy 6, withdraw strategically. This one is underrated. The most powerful people are not always visible, but they're always felt. If you're always present, you become background noise. But if you withdraw from conversations, group chats, meetings, and only appear when it matters, your presence regains gravity. You don't need to isolate. You need to control your availability. Leave some texts unanswered. Let your silence be felt. Don't show up just because you were invited. Show up when it aligns with your goals. Scarcity creates value. Over-availability kills mystery. Strategy 7, end things before they feel finished. Here's something people won't admit. Most human attachment is built on incompletion. We obsess over what we can't finish. We ruminate on what feels unresolved. Use that. End conversations one sentence early. Leave meetings with one point still floating in their minds. Deliver feedback with no wrap-up. Why? Because closure ends curiosity. And when you leave people guessing, they keep thinking about you long after you're gone. That's not ghosting. That's psychological imprinting. Strategy 8, protect your inner world like a fortress. People are going to ask what drives you, what you want, what keeps you up at night. Answer in riddles. Why? Because when people fully understand your why, they start plotting your how. And when people start calculating your motives, they try to shape them. Instead, say I'm adjusting instead of I'm upset. Say I'm focused instead of I'm struggling. Say we'll see instead of I hope. Your inner world is sacred. Protect it. The less they know, the more they wonder. And the more they wonder, the more they watch. That's not mystery for mystery's sake. It's protecting your leverage. Final note, you're not playing games. You're regaining control. Let's be clear. This is not about manipulation, deceit, or being heartless. This is about power through presence, not pressure. It's about respect through restraint, not rage. You've spent years being emotionally available, fully visible, always explainable. And what did it earn you? Disrespect, exhaustion, regret. Now it's time to try something different. Not because you want to hurt others, but because you're tired of hurting yourself by being too easy to reach. Start slow, one strategy at a time. Pick one room, one relationship, one setting, and apply the discipline of unreadability. Watch how fast the dynamic changes. You don't have to speak louder to be heard. You just need to be silent long enough that they start questioning their own noise. Let the quiet ones rise. Let's get something straight. You don't need to be loud to dominate. You need to be unclear enough that people never stop trying to figure you out. Because in psychology, one principle explains obsession better than any other. The mind doesn't like open loops. When something feels unfinished, unresolved, or unanswered, it lingers. It demands attention. It returns again and again. Not because it was important, but because it wasn't closed. This is known as the Zeigarnik effect, the tendency for people to remember incomplete experiences more vividly than completed ones. Now think, when someone walks into a room, says little, but carries themselves with quiet intensity, why can't you stop watching them? Because your mind is trying to fill in the blanks. That's the power of mystery. It doesn't demand attention, it attracts it. It doesn't speak loudly, it invites projection. And projection is where things get interesting. People don't see you, they see their story of you. When you're mysterious, people don't see you for who you are. They see you as who they think you might be. They assign meaning to your silence. They analyze your facial expressions. They tell themselves stories about what your pause meant, why you looked away, why you didn't reply. That's not confusion. That's control. Because when people are busy trying to interpret you, they're no longer focused on controlling you. They tread lighter. They behave more carefully. They avoid triggering a version of you they haven't met yet. This creates psychological tension. And tension is the birthplace of respect. Mystery creates distance. Distance creates value. We've been conditioned to think closeness equals connection. But in reality, scarcity drives desire. The more someone is around, the easier they are to dismiss. The more someone reveals, the quicker we move on. But when someone gives you just enough to be intrigued and then pulls away, your mind locks on. That's not coincidence. That's design. The best storytellers leave cliffhangers. The most powerful leaders say less. The most magnetic people give you just enough to care, then disappear before you're satisfied. They don't fear being misunderstood. They use it, because the misunderstood person becomes memorable. And in a world obsessed with being seen, the one person who can't be defined becomes the one person they can't forget. The mirror effect. When your silence reflects their insecurities. One of the most powerful psychological weapons you have is silence. Not the awkward kind, the deliberate kind. When you go quiet after being disrespected, people reflect. When you don't reply, they overthink. When you disappear, they notice. And what's worse, they don't just notice the silence. They project their own guilt, shame, or insecurity into it. That's the mirror. You've stopped engaging, but they're still talking to themselves. Not because you punish them, but because they realized in your absence what your presence was really worth. Presence isn't just about being seen. It's about being felt. When you're fully accessible, you blend in. But when you're selectively unavailable, your presence gains texture, weight, impact. You stop being just another person. You become a signal, a shift in the atmosphere, a moment people prepare for. Not because you said something, but because you didn't. That's real power. That's legacy power. The kind that lingers in memory long after you've left the room. And it's built through restraint, not performance. Through being felt, not explained. Through mystery, not popularity. Final thought. What they can't understand, they respect more. You've been taught to be clear, to be kind, to make people feel comfortable. But power doesn't live in comfort. It lives in contrast. You're not unforgettable because of what you said. You're unforgettable because of what you refuse to say. You're not respected because of how much you give. You're respected because of what you withhold, intentionally. The more predictable you are, the easier it is to place you in a box. But when people can't define you, they can't dismiss you. Let them wonder. Let them guess. Let their mind do the work. Because the longer they try to understand you, the longer they'll remember you. So far, you've learned the principles of silent power, how presence, mystery, and emotional discipline build respect. But how do you actually apply these ideas? Let's get specific, because theory is useless if it doesn't change the way you walk into a room, reply to a message, or handle conflict. Here are 3 domains of life where silent strength can elevate you. Instantly. 1. In the workplace. Lead without explaining. Work environments are breeding grounds for overcommunication. People rush to prove their value by talking, oversharing, apologizing, and over-explaining. But real influence? It's quiet, it's composed, it's deliberate. Apply it like this. When asked for your opinion, pause before speaking. Even a 2-second delay adds weight. Speak last in meetings when possible. You'll sound more decisive and reduce the risk of being overridden. If a colleague disrespects you publicly, don't react immediately. Wait, then respond once, calmly and surgically. When someone asks about your next move, promotion, change, strategy, don't lay it all out. Say, I'm observing. I'll move when the timing makes sense. This subtle shift makes people watch you, not because you're loud, but because you don't need to be. Presence at work isn't about dominating space, it's about owning energy. Chuck 2. In personal relationships, redefine what boundaries feel like. If you're always explaining your feelings, giving second chances, or trying to keep the peace, you're slowly leaking self-respect. Boundaries are not about shutting people out. They're about training people how to treat you. Apply it like this. When someone crosses a line, don't lecture. Go quiet. Let your absence speak. Stop saying sorry when you're not actually wrong. When asked why you're distant, don't justify. Just say, I needed space to realign. If a friend constantly takes without giving, reduce access without a formal announcement. People don't learn from conversations. They learn from adjusted access. The person who never enforces their limits becomes forgettable. But the one who disappears once, without warning, becomes unforgettable. 3. In your social presence, let people feel your silence. We live in an age of overvisibility. Social media rewards constant posting, constant explanation, constant emotional exposure. But you don't need to play that game. If you want real magnetism, give people less to figure out. Apply it like this. Don't post every move. Let people wonder what you're working on. When others argue online, resist the bait. Stillness is now countercultural. Instead of venting frustrations publicly, journal them privately. When you do show up, in person or online, be composed, intentional, brief. The contrast will create impact. You'll notice something powerful happens. People start paying more attention when you speak less. Mystery doesn't mean being fake. It means being strategic with access. Bonus, the 1-sentence rule. This is one of the fastest ways to change how people perceive you. Instead of long-winded explanations, start replacing conversations with one-line truths. That doesn't work for me. Noted. Let's revisit this later. I'm not ready to share more right now. These phrases signal clarity, not coldness. They stop emotional overreach without starting conflict. You don't owe anyone your emotional playbook. Final reminder, you train people with your energy. Every time you over-explain, you teach people that your boundaries are negotiable. Every time you stay silent when you should walk away, you tell them your presence is guaranteed. Flip that. Let your silence speak first. Let your withdrawal create weight. Let your boundaries require no announcement, because the moment you stop asking for respect and start living like someone who already has it, the room shifts, and you don't need to say a word. Let's be honest. We've all been there, giving too much, explaining too often, hoping kindness would buy us the respect we deserved. But in the real world, being understood isn't the same as being valued, and being available doesn't guarantee appreciation. It often guarantees invisibility. This entire message isn't about changing who you are. It's about controlling how the world experiences you. Because the truth is, most people don't respond to kindness. They respond to consequences. And when you remove your energy, when you go quiet, when you become unpredictable, the world finally pauses. And that pause, that's your leverage. Why this message matters. This isn't about fear. This is about self-respect turned into a strategy. It's for the person who's done everything right and still been ignored. It's for the quiet one in loud rooms, for the kind soul who's tired of being taken for granted. This is your permission to stop over-explaining, to stop proving, to stop showing up for people who never earned access. You are not a product of volume. You are a presence. And presence, when built with discipline, becomes unforgettable. For your next step, if this message resonated with you, don't let it be another piece of content you scroll past. Use it. Apply one principle this week, one pause, one boundary, one quiet exit, then watch how fast people adjust. And if this hit different, show your support. Like this video. Subscribe to add Unleashed T7S. This platform exists to help people like you reclaim quiet power in a noisy world. Every share helps us reach the next person who's ready to stop being overlooked and start being respected. We're not building noise here. We're building presence.